Hello and welcome back to Module 2.3, which is Advanced Content Creation, and today we are busy with part 2 of 6. In the previous lesson, we started the product lifecycle conversation and we spoke a little bit about what it is and how people see the product lifecycle. And today we're actually going to start on the first phase of this product lifecycle, which is the introduction phase. So we're continuing in Next Level Radio and today we're looking at pages 96 to 99. So please go and read page 96 to 99. And before we continue or we go any further, just to recap from the previous lesson, in business, every product goes through a life cycle or life changes. This is the condition in which the product or item's success changes over time. And these phases are grouped into 4 different categories, which are the introduction phase, the growth phase, the maturity phase, and lastly, the decline phase. And we said there were a couple of widely accepted assumptions around these phases or around these stages, which are that products have a limited life cycle, that the success or sales of that product go through these 4 stages, and these all offer up different challenges and opportunities. And then in every phase, the business has to work on different strategies to ensure the success of the product. Why are we going through this? Because radio is no different. Radio also goes through all 4 of these stages, and each stage requires different strategies and techniques to navigate. So why is it important for us to look at radio in terms of the product life cycle? Why do we go through these stages? Because the most important part of any radio show or content piece is to keep a listener engaged and listening for as long as possible. And the reason why we're going through the product life cycle is for exactly these reasons, is to try and keep the listeners engaged for as long as possible. By going through the phases and by seeing what is the most important in each of these phases for the listeners. From a commercial perspective, the longer you keep the listener engaged, the more advertising they will hear and the more effective the advertiser will be, which means a better return on investment, so a better ROI for the client. So at the end of the day, it's good for everyone if we can. It's good for everyone for us to use this formula to try and keep listeners for as long as possible. Because if there's no advertising, even if there's no advertising, this content is still considered paid for by the user. Because if I download a podcast, what did I say? I use my time and I use my data. A disengaged user is obviously less likely to buy another piece of content with their data and time, because they didn't get anything out of the previous one. So why on earth would I invest in something again that isn't investing in me? And from a public broadcasting perspective, no value can be put on a piece of disengaging audio. The number 1 rule in radio is therefore to keep the listener listening for longer. So again, I ask the question, what goes into a radio show or a podcast? And when it comes to these live stages and the clocks that we then form after this, how does it work? Do we randomly just put things into clocks and we hope for the best? Is that what we said in the previous lesson? No, it's not, okay? There are specific things that are done for specific reasons, and we're going to start going through them now. So the introduction phase. This phase is us equal to going into a bar, sitting on one side of the bar and seeing someone else on the other side of the bar, making eye contact, and then walking up to that person and starting that first conversation, okay? That's how I want you to picture the introduction phase. That is literally the phase that That is literally the phase that a radio show is in for the first 18 months of it being on air. We, as the listeners, are trying to get to know the people on air. But that first meeting is always a little bit, you're always a little bit hesitant on that first meeting. You're hesitant to this in the sense of you don't want to offend the other person or say anything that might put a wedge between you and drive them away. So you're very, so you keep your conversations quite limited to a certain number of subjects. So if I were to make a list of the things I would not have an in-depth conversation about the first time I meet someone in said bar, it would definitely be things like religion. I'm not going to raise religion if you and I just met. I'm not going to raise politics. I'm not going to talk about your sexual history or my sexual history. I'm not going to talk about controversial worldviews. I'm definitely not going to put myself in an embarrassing spot where I tell you about my embarrassing moments. And lastly, I'm not going to discuss any personal details that may push you away. Things I'm more likely to talk about may include something that we might have in common. So the song we just heard playing, or the entertaining barman, or the great DJ that's there. So something in my vicinity, or your favorite types of entertainment, such as a series on Netflix I'm enjoying at the moment, or an album that just dropped that I downloaded that they might be able to relate to if they like the music that's playing. We might discuss general relationship topics, so not on any of us specifically, maybe just things about why we're single, or things we like in other people, general lifestyle topics, things that we're interested in, and personal, not private, there's a difference, observations about the shared space you are both in and we are both inhabiting at the moment. So when I say personal, not private observations, what do you think that means? What is the difference between personal and private? Why is it important to have a difference? So personal refers to a particular person, okay? So a personal favor, your personal life, a letter marked personal. Whereas private means it's only meant for me, okay? So only intended for persons immediately concerned, so confidential, or a private meeting. If something is private in your mind, it's probably not a good idea to share it on the radio. But if it's personal, it's things that you can share because you're sharing it with your friends on a one-to-one basis, okay? It's just important to remember there's always going to be a line between personal and private observations, etc. Okay, so if we look at the things that we mentioned in this introduction phase that we are willing to talk about, this is the same approach one should take for one's new show. So I'm only going to, for the first 18 months of my new radio show, I'm only going to talk about these kinds of things. And when it comes to clocks, yes, because we are going to look at a clock again at the end of this lesson. According to Tracy Johnson, this is what the percentages of content mix should look like on a new show. So you should have 10% for personal observation. That's it. 35% will be station and promos. 35% will be features and benchmarks, and 20% will be lifestyle or relationship. So as you can see, it's kind of superficial. So it's kind of a superficial show at this point. We're straying away from anything that might be controversial. We're staying away from the religions, the politics, the controversial worldviews, the embarrassing stories, etc. Okay? And we're sticking to the safer options. So if we take the analogy of the list of things you might talk about when you first meet someone in a bar, and we and we put it to the percentages of content categories, this is what it'll look like, okay? So on the left side there, you have your content, which is everything we might talk about. On the right-hand side, we have what it would be in radio terms. So the first thing there is, so the first thing we said we might have a discussion around is something we might have in common, like the song we just heard playing, the entertaining barman, or the great DJ. If we put that in radio content, it's the station and promotions, okay? It's safe. If we look at the content where we said we might talk about our favorite types of entertainment, such as a Netflix series we're enjoying or an album we've just downloaded, in radio content terms, that's the features and the benchmarks. Again, safe. The third one, there's the general relationship topics. In radio content, it would also just be relationship content. And in the bar sense of the content, there's general lifestyle topics. In radio content, again, we can also talk about lifestyle content. And then the last one on the left side under content is the personal, not private, observations about the shared space you're both in. Under radio content, that would be personal observations, okay? So this is the content comparisons in the introductory phase of creating good radio content. Okay, so now we have an idea of what we're allowed to talk about for the first 18 months. We're allowed to talk about station and promotion, feature and benchmarks, relationship content, lifestyle content, and personal observations, okay? But only a certain amount, only a certain percentage of everything. So now when we're planning an hour of our new radio show, we'll therefore need to structure the times as follows. So for our station and promotion topic, we can structure the content around information about what is happening in the city, information about what is happening on the station, what's happening in the city, what's happening in South Africa, what's happening in the world, and what's happening on your show. And the time that you spend talking about that is 35% of the time. So 35% per hour. If we look at your features and benchmarks topic, the kind of content you can use there is you can have entertaining, engaging, relevant and relatable features or benchmark moments where listeners can play along, such as games, because we know everyone loves playing games, whether you phone in or whether it's a case of you just sit in your car and you play along. And again, the time spent talking about that would be 35% of an hour. If we get into your relationship content and your lifestyle content, things here would include relatable relationship discussions or stories. And there's a lot of those around. And the same with common stories or discussions around lifestyles, okay? So things we'll have in common, and that would make up 20% of an hour. The last one, personal observations. Under content here, you can include your own observations about relatable topics, and that would make up 10% of the time. And that's how we'll make up an hour of radio, 4 o'clock, based on the introductory phase. All right, so now we're going to look at links. And you might want to know what a link is, or you might have heard me or anyone else from radio use that term before, or use that terminology, because it's one that we use very often without even realize that that's what we use, okay? So a link is the time that a presenter uses to talk about something that has just happened. So when you intro a song that just played, when you chat about a song that just played or a news bulletin that was just read, okay? That's the one side of it. And then on the other side of it, you introduce something that's about to happen. So whether it's a competition that's going to start or a story they're about to tell, okay? So you have something on both sides. You have something to start your link with, and you have something to end your link with. So if we take the time that if we take the percentages that we just looked at here, and we put them to links, then it'll be as follows. So station and promotion, which is 35% of the time, would equal 5 links. So these links will equal 1 show, okay? So this is not an hour, this is a whole show. So 15 links equals a show. So station and promotion, which is 35% of the time, equal 5 of the 15 links. Features and benchmarks, which is 35% also, is also 5 links. Relationship and lifestyle content make up 20%, which is 3 links. So 3 to 4 links, depending, and personal observations, which is 10% of the time, will also be 1 link or 2 link, depending. Okay, 1 link or 2 links, depending. So now we understand how this should be broken down if we want to start on our clocks. How do we create the best radio clock, taking in all the information that we have now gathered so far? And then how do we keep the stations sounding familiar and fresh? So what is it that we're going to have to look at? Okay, we need to analyze the market and the station. This means we need to look at the radio market, at the radio station, and at the music format of the specific radio station, okay? We need to look at things like the station's broadcast area, and we need to look at who's the station's target audience. And from there, we'll look at the content mix under the introductory phase to break down our clocks. There are, however, a few rules that you need to remember, which we haven't mentioned before, and that is that you never play 2 songs back to back without identifying the station, so without playing a station imaging. Always link before the spots and throw forward to the song or content after the ads, okay? Remember, throw forward is not telling the listener what's coming up. It's telling them why they have to listen. Do you remember of the previous classes? We said we tell them why they need to listen. So we give them the why before we tell them the how, okay? So we sell them the content or the song to keep them listening for longer. So as you can see, all the classes are now starting to come together, okay, as one. So you always link before the spot. So you always link before ads and throw forward to whatever's coming after the ads, because we're telling them why they need to keep listening. And then always play imaging out of the spots into a song. And keep in mind the length of your talk time. So try to limit the length that you are talking. So far, we've built our radio show without the GIF system, okay? What we're going to start doing now is incorporate the GIF system. So the GIF system is used by Tracy Johnson to help set up the content profile of a radio show that gives the radio station the best chance to improve quickly. So that's everything that we're doing now at the moment, is just trying to give the radio show the best chance of success on the long run, and now we're trying to improve it quickly. So GIF stands for Games, Information, Funny, and Story, hence GIFs. GIFs is a system that radio presenters and producers can use to create and program their content so that their personalities stand out. If we start with G there for games, games is a big part of our lives. I told you earlier, I also like playing games when it's on the radio. Throughout our lives, we will continue to play games. From the basic elementary games when we were in school, to sport games as adults, to bingo if you're older, or even some students like playing bingo. Overall, however, games are a vital part of the fabric of entertainment in our society. So mirroring this on air is an essential part of any radio station's content mix. If I think about how many of you have told me that you enjoy the games that are played on the breakfast shows in the morning, it just shows that our society enjoy them. Radio shows should be designed in such a way that listeners can play along. So you should build in interactive elements that engage your audience. This could be actual games, such as whatever it might be, heads up, Or it could be phone topics that include audience responses. However, gamifying does not always mean an interactive caller or listeners playing along with the show on the phone. It could be listeners, it could instead be listeners playing along in their car or from wherever they're listening. I'm one of those listeners who is never going to actually phone into the station, but I'll sit in my car and play along. Because I enjoy the questions and I enjoy I especially enjoy the Trivial Pursuit kind of games or the music games. So people like me who enjoy listening and playing from the car, but who won't phone in, are called passive active callers, or are called passive active listeners. So the passive in the sense that they're not on the line talking to the presenter, but active in the sense that they're playing along from wherever they are. Okay, so that's games in essence. So the idea is to work games into your show. The next one is information. This is a very broad category that can include news, weather, traffic, and sports. Or it could even be events that are happening within the community, or an entertainment report. Or it could be a style and a fashion update. Here you could include a daily feature, so commentary on the news or once-off conversation regarding something in the news. We should think of this category as a demonstration to the listener that you're in touch with what's happening in the world. So this is where you show that you know just what's going on around you. If we look at the next one, then it's F for funny, okay? Nothing beats funny on air. You can say what you want, but nothing beats funny on air. If you can make listeners laugh, you own them. But you have to be truly funny, or at least create funny situations. So this can't be overemphasized. It's critical, okay? You have to truly be funny or truly be able to create funny situations. And then the last one there is S for story. I know I hammer on storytelling a lot, but storytelling is so important. It's one of the most important things. If you want to be an on-air presenter, you need to be able to know how to tell a story. This is probably the most crucial part for a radio presenter. Your audience can get involved. Your audience can get involved with the show by following a story as it unfolds. If it's a relationship feature, these are hugely successful because they are content containers for great stories. There's a reason there's so many real life relationship stories on TV also, because it's something people can follow and they can invest in. Along with making people laugh, learning to tell stories is a critical skill for every personality. As I've mentioned time and time again, not everyone is a great storyteller, but you can learn to be a much better storyteller by studying it. If we look at how we would apply GIFs. To program the GIF system, Johnson recommends that you start by deciding what percentages each of the 4 categories should represent on your show. A few shows will be a strict 25% for each category. Maybe you're a 50% funny, 30% story, 10% information and games. So find your ideal formula to create features and to hold GIFs. A simple example for your 3-hour breakdown would be something like in your first hour doing a game like a pop quiz, having an information section where you chat about the news from the streets of Johannesburg, having something funny, and an example there would be Darren Simpson's or Wackade Simpson's phone pranks. And perhaps you would work in a story, so storytelling. about, I don't know, one of your presenters learning to drive an 18-wheeler to deliver water to the drought-stricken Western Cape, okay? Your second hour could then be your game, so a phoner of the day. Your information could be a Mzansi Showbiz report. Your funny for the day could be an Ask Mel feature. And your story for the day could be your love letters, which you read out on air. And in your third hour, it could be, your game could be 30 seconds, so a radio version of 30 seconds. Your information could be a Hollywood showbiz report. Your funny could be another phone prank. And your story could be story time with Brad, so just someone telling a story. When you're able to Okay, so what do we need for us to build an introductory clock? Because your homework. All right, so we're going to briefly look at how to design an introductory clock. Okay, so what you're going to do for me for homework is you're going to create a music format clock using the parameters of this class, so the introduction phase. And how are we going to do that? As follows. So if we need to create an introduction phase clock, then we need to take into consideration a couple of things. Okay, if we go back here, not here, this is for the 3 hours. Okay, so now we know for the 3 hours, we've got 5, 5, 3, and 1 links. Okay, so now for 1 hour, what do we do for 1 hour? Keeping in mind, there needs to be some songs in there as well, hey? So we know that for an hour, we need to have 35% station and promotion, 35% features and benchmarks, 20% lifestyle/relationship, and 10% personal observation. So now let's go to our clock here. So obviously we're not going to use this clock with its quarters. Okay, so let's look at this clock, okay? So this is an average hot clock. So at the top of the hour, you're going to have your news. You'll have some news and some ads. You'll see here. So now if we start building this clock. Ooh, that was quick, hey? Quick building of a clock. If we look at this clock that we have here now with regards to our introduction phase clock, then we need to look at how everything will be. We need to check what will go where. Hey, so at the top of the hour here, we start with the news. Then we've got some music. Then there will be a feature. Okay, so then we're going to talk at 9 minutes past. Then according to this thing, okay, so we're not working correctly or exactly according to this thing, but this is just to give you an idea. So here's another example of a clock. See, it starts at the top of the hour with the local news, then it goes into the ads/weather, then there are 2 songs, then there's something where you're going to talk. So in the case of the introduction phase, that could be, well, it could be a tease competition. It will have to be some kind of station and promotion feature, or it will be some sort of either station and promotion or features or benchmarks, okay? So this will be kind of a set that will take place here. Then there's ads again, then there's a song, then there's your competition if you threw forward to your competition, or whether it's a game, or whatever else it might be that you want to put in there for as either your station and promotion or your features or benchmarks. Then it's 2 songs again, then it's your personality link. So in this case, it'll be, or in our case, that will be your personal observation. Okay, so keep in mind, you only have 10% for that, which we said equals 1 link. So if you do your 1 link of personal observations in this first hour or in this specific hour, then you don't have anything, then you don't have any more personal observation links for 2 other hours, okay? Then there's another 2 songs, then there's another either a lifestyle, or then there's another either a features and benchmarks or station and promotions link. More ads, or in their case, album of the week, but let's just say another 2 songs. And then this will probably be your lifestyle or relationship link. And then another 2 songs, and then just a general tease link for what's coming up in the next hour, okay? So this is probably a better example for you. In the previous class, what I asked you to do for me is to create a morning show, okay, a morning clock with specific relation to breakfast. So this one is, so this is very similar. The only difference is now you're starting to base it on the phases, okay? So we'll be doing one in every phase. So this one is the first phase for the first 18 months, what you will be doing, okay? So think about the kind of content that you will now be including in this. The kind of links that you'll work in here with regards to what we just spoke about. So obviously you can't just use any kind of content. It needs to fit within the parameters of your introduction phase, okay? So that's your homework. That's what I want from you to submit to me again for next week. Thursday's class. Okay? So for next week, Wednesday, it's your breakfast one. And for next week, Thursday, it's the introduction phase clock, okay? And that brings us to the end of this lecture. So what we'll be doing for the next lecture is we'll be continuing on to the next phase, which is growth, and just show you the difference and show you what happens if you do follow these phases. And with that, I say goodbye.